Why, hello everyone, and welcome to another Tips Tuesday session here on the channels out there on the social webs. Well, I don't even know where I'm talking about today. I'm excited to have you join me here today because this is the long-awaited addition of podcasts to YouTube. So YouTube announced this week or last week that they are putting out podcasts, and we can now share our podcasts from YouTube. Now, I know this may not be new to some. I know that some people out there are sitting going, but I've been doing a video log and sharing my podcast out there. But there are some handy tips for you guys in there too about this episode. So the advantages for us using podcasts on YouTube and being able to share our podcasts on YouTube is one, we can convert existing videos over to a playlist. Number two, they get found on YouTube podcasts in the YouTube music area. So that's a really huge one for us being able to bring that over. Number two, is we get a little card, some search, and YouTube is pushing podcasts right now, so you'll get to appear in podcast search. So there are a number of benefits for us to be appearing in YouTube podcasts. And if you haven't read the article already on podcasts, there is a handy little services guide that Google has created that I'm just going to pop into chat here for you today and pop it in. So services guide is here. And it is really, really simple to be able to do this. So what are our use cases? What are our use cases for converting a podcast? So there are a couple of use cases in particular. One is you've got an existing audio podcast out there and you want to bring that over and import that through to YouTube. The second is you've got videos out there. So similar to even this Tips Tuesday session where there's lots of talking, there's not so much on camera apart from today, where we go through and we can maybe convert that through to a podcast that people can listen to on their way to and from work. When you are converting a video series or a playlist, we do want to make sure that it is mainly audio content that we're creating because it's going across to YouTube music. And not everyone watches the video along the way when they're putting out when they're listening to YouTube music along the way. So for you to get started, I've got a couple of handy tutorials I'm about to show you to help you get through that process. The first one is the one for those of you who've been podcasting for a while. You've been getting an audio version of your video version of your podcast out. And we're going to look at how you can convert that podcast through to a YouTube, that video playlist through to a YouTube podcast within a few seconds. So that's the first one we're going to dive into today, how to do that. I'm going to put that on screen now. If you've got any questions along the way, please feel free to ask. Tips Tuesday is all about learning things. There is no stupid question. And we will look at how to convert, first of all, that podcast that we have existingly through to how to convert. We're going to look at converting that podcast. We're going to look at how to convert that video playlist to a podcast if it happens to fit. Or videos that might be able to be turned into a podcast on YouTube for a series of time. There might be the instance where you want to convert an existing playlist into this new YouTube's podcast format. And it's actually not all that hard. So we're going to delve in and do it right here. So you want to make sure that you're in the YouTube studio. You then heading across to the playlist tab and you're going to look for the playlist that you would like to create. Now, Monday Morning Motivation Replay is one of Clive's that we'd like to turn into a podcast. So we're going to go set as podcast. It will step us through the journey over here. So we're most probably not going to call it replay anymore. We're going to call it Monday Morning Motivation. We need to add a description to it. And we also need to add a square image. And I've prepped the square image of his podcast from here. And we've got a short little description here for being able to pop into that Monday Morning Motivation. Now, remember on YouTube, hashtags are loved. So you can put in motivation. We can put in mindset. Anything that relates to the podcast as well. Okay, so there we go. We're done. And we've got our podcast now. All 96 episodes of Clive Monday Morning Motivation are here in a podcast. We can edit on YouTube. We can set it as a playlist. It's already a playlist. We can delete it from there. So our podcast now has moved from playlist to podcast, and we've converted an existing video series over to a podcast. So there we go, guys. We've been able to sharing video versions of the videos playing in. So there we go. In that little tutorial quick, you were able to take an existing video series and convert it to podcasts. Where would you use that? If the video is conversational, if you've been talking to someone, if you've maybe done video podcasting already and you want to bring it over to YouTube podcasts, because the reality of it is lots of people out there have been doing a video version of their podcast for some time, and you can convert it over simply and easy to a YouTube podcast from there. Now, as I said, YouTube podcasts are new. When an algorithm or someone brings out about something new, they're going to preface the show and they're going to preface the people using that. And with podcasts, we get the advantages of being able to appear in search cards. YouTube's got their own focused search channel as well. So for those of us, I'm so glad that that's pretty awesome and cool along the way for you. Thank you very much. Now, for those of us who've been doing audio podcasts for a while, bring it over to video. How do we do that? Now, there is a simple and easy way to do that, and that's with a handy tool that we use in-house here called Repurpose. I'm going to show you that tutorial now, and then we'll wrap up this Tips Tuesday episode with some best practices along the way to help you just making sure that you move your podcast across in the right way to connect with your audience as well. Have and transfer that audio into video if you haven't been recording video podcasts. So what you need to do over here is you're going to go create, and you're going to create new podcast, and we're not setting an existing playlist. We're going to create a new podcast, and we're going to add the title. So for ours, this is the Course Creator Circle. I'm going to bring in over from Wishka. So we need our graphic and our artwork, and then we've got our Course Creator Circle podcast description in here. So I'm just going to quickly copy that out so that it can go in over here. We're adding our description. We need our little course artwork, and we'll pop up over here and we'll upload the artwork ready to go from there. So from the downloads, here's our Course Creator Circle podcast, all ready to go. Think of your approved expert. We're at 490 out of 5,000 characters. Fantastic. Subscribe. So we've got a cool call to action. So we've created our podcast here. So our podcast is now here. Now we've created the playlist. Now, how do we get the audio over from wherever our podcast host is over to our podcast here on YouTube? We head to a tool called Repurpose.io, and Repurpose.io allows you to repurpose content into all sorts of things. And we've got a talk podcast to YouTube over here, and we're going to create a new workflow. So what we need to do first is we need to create a connection. My YouTube's already connected, but I need to add a new connection. So our podcast source through to our podcast over here. So we're hitting that, and we can put in the Apple Podcast URL or our feed URL. So I've got our Apple Podcast URL over here, which I can copy out, but you might have it on your host as well, whatever you would like to do from there. So we go do that. We hit the lovely little connect button. Repurpose is now pulling in the episodes for us from the podcast that we've got out on Apple. So then we're heading over here over to workflows, and then we're going to make a workflow. So over here, we're going to create our workflow, and what we want to do is we want to take our podcast source. We're going to choose our connection, being our audio podcast for Course Creator Circle. We want to convert the audio to a video, and we want to go through a full episode. So we're choosing our YouTube channel. We're then choosing our playlist, which is our Course Creator Circle podcast that we've just made. So it should be sitting up the top here. And if we wanted to make a new playlist, you could do it from here. But I like to make sure the playlist is set up in YouTube the way I would like it to be. We hit the little done button from over here, and that's then created our workflow. From our workflow point of view, we can then go and view the content. So the content is now set up over here, and we've got some content coming in for the workload for the video. So under settings, we've got the opportunity to also play and tweak with the settings and the template that we want to use. I'm going to use one of the standard default legacy templates that Repurpose has in here today, just to make it quickly and simply and easily. So you can see the legacy templates, and you can then go and just go through and have a bit of a look about what template you might want to have a look from there, or you've got predefined templates as well. So the legacy templates are just sitting down here. I've used the gold one for talk, so I'm going to keep everything consistent and use the gold one from here. My episode title will pop up in here, the sound wave, and the podcast artwork will pop up on the phone. So we hit the save button. And then we're able to publish our first episode of our podcast. Now, YouTube suggestions are that we publish in order. So what do we teach as a course creator is going to be the first one that I hit publish on. So I hit the little publish button over here. Now it's going to bring in the descriptions and everything from our podcast. So let's dive in, just making sure that we're not over our character lines. We've got 5,000 characters in here. Now we can add our tags. Now this is really key when we're optimizing our videos for YouTube. So we might go course creation. I will most probably jump into YouTube a little bit later and up these course creation. And I teach online courses and we'll pop in Think Big Expert. Okay, so now we've popped in our titles. Now we're not doing any custom artwork because it's going to bring it over from there. I like to schedule the video just to make sure that everything's going to be okay. So the last thing I want to do is have a YouTube video going out too many times. And the beautiful thing here is you can see when I've already got one schedule going out to YouTube over here. So we'll schedule this one for tomorrow, 6:25. It's a good time for me. We hit schedule now, and then our video is ready to go. It's ready to schedule across to YouTube. So if we want to have a look at one of the ones that we've had out on YouTube, I'm going to quickly go over to my YouTube channel now and show you one of the existing ones on the Talk podcast so you can see it. Okay, so we're back over here on YouTube, and here you can see a published episode, how to add value to your content already live on YouTube. If I want to add more keywords and stuff in here, I would tap into vidIQ to be able to do that. But because Repurpose is bringing everything over, I don't really have to worry about thumbnails. Everything's done and taken care of. It's done and taken care of, and the video cut off on me at the last minute. That's fun, isn't it? Okay, so that is the two ways that you can bring your existing podcasts over to YouTube. Obviously, you can load videos and you can load to a YouTube playlist, and that's just hitting that little create button up the top and just creating a new episode along the way. Our best practices for bringing podcasts across to YouTube require us to think ahead, to make sure that the videos that we're adding, and you can also add existing videos to a new podcast playlist by just adding them to a playlist, is to think best practice. Audio, we're talking about music here. We're talking about YouTube music, audio-based content. So the episodes that we need to put out there need to be audio-based that are added to our podcast. Number two is we need to make sure that we're optimizing them. We're optimizing our description, our tags, our keywords along the way so that it can be heard and listened to. And number four is to make sure that we don't flood the feed all at once. If you're able to bring in and import a podcast using tools like Repurpose.io to spread them out and schedule them out means that you're not going to flood the feed. You start to bring out new episodes, and you might attract new listeners that are just tapping into those episodes along the way. And then finally, we need to incorporate publishing our podcast to YouTube using these new formats as part of our podcasting workflow. So making sure that you've got that final checklist, adding it to any checklist that you might have, that you're going to publish that podcast to YouTube along the way. I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for another Tips Tuesday session. This session was asked for inside the Business Facebook group. So if you would ever like to request a Tips Tuesday session, please do so. And I'm going to wrap up this Tips Tuesday session by just showing you what arrived behind me here. Our Course Creator Circle guide has arrived for final print proof. So I popped it up and did a nice little prop, and we'll be running through that one to there as well. So for those of you who've been waiting for the Course Creator Circle guide, it is almost here. It just needs one more final look from my eyes, and we'll be ordering your copies and having them sent direct to you from the printer. So until next time, thank you for joining me for Tips Tuesday. If you've got any questions, please ask me in the video, and we'll be back again soon.